Welcome to the third podcast in the Guilty Parent Club series, where we're going to follow on from what we heard in episode 2. Understanding our parent brains and what happens when we get into those really tricky moments with our kids. In our first podcast, we introduced the ideas behind the Guilty Parent Club and the 6P key framework, and how each P key will provide strategies for us as parents to help manage our emotional regulation, as well as parenting techniques that actually work with our kids, because we need both. In the last podcast, we heard about the science behind our dysregulated brains as parents and how this impacts on our ability to parent in the way that we want to. We heard that our brain's threat mode can be triggered really easily by our children for lots of good reasons. And we learnt that our brains are more likely to be triggered into that threat mode when we're affected by things such as tiredness, not getting our basic needs met, having no time to ourselves, having too little support, and struggling with our sense of identity. All of those external factors are really, really important to consider when we're thinking about that fight-flight mode that our body can get into. But we're also more likely to be triggered into our threat mode when we feel self-doubtful, guilty, or ashamed as parents. When we criticize ourselves, this internal process can actually trigger our threat mode too. And this, of course, creates a vicious cycle of feeling dysregulated, being reactive with our kids, and then feeling bad about it. We also heard that our kids' brains work in a very similar way to ours, and that we can bounce off each other when the both of us are struggling to stay regulated, leading to yet another vicious cycle. It's a lot to take in, and that's why I've created a workbook that goes along with this Guilty Parent Club series. It helps to break down this information and also show some of these cycles visually. So just hop over to the show notes and you'll be able to download it. At the end of the last episode, we asked ourselves, okay, so does all of this mean that we shouldn't feel guilty when we think we've got things wrong with our kids? Let's look at the science. Guilt is actually an essential emotion. From an evolutionary point of view, we needed it to help us stay safe and protected by our pack. And if we did something that might be perceived by others as wrong, the emotion of guilt helped us to realize this, and then it motivated us to take responsibility, to make amends and change our behavior to make sure we didn't do it again, thereby gaining the trust and the cooperation of those around us. This social motivation, hardwired into our brains, is also why we can't help comparing ourselves to others. Are we safe in the pack? Guilt is triggered when we do something outside external standards, those standards from other people, but also when we violate our own values and personal standards. So as you can see, the expectations we set for ourselves and the expectations we perceive from others and the society around us play a huge role in how guilty we feel and how our brain is functioning. And we cover more of this in the parent imperfection key. So it's actually not our fault that we feel guilty in relation to parenting our children, because our children are the most important thing to most of us. Our brains are literally wired up to feel this way, and furthermore, our brains are designed to remember negative things more than positive. So it becomes easy to ruminate on parenting moments that didn't go well, rather than thinking about all the ones that did. However, when we feel guilty all the time, it can start to have a negative impact on our mental health as well as our parenting. And a lot of the time, guilt then starts to tip into shame, which is a far more poisonous emotion. So, yes, I'm telling you that the title of the club is actually kind of inaccurate. We're often talking about shame rather than guilt. Let me tell you what I mean. Guilt is an emotion related to our behaviour, not our identity. So it's something like, I'm a good mum, I'm a good dad, but I did something I wish I hadn't. You might think, gosh, I really wasn't as kind as I wanted to be to my child there. I wasn't as patient. This could be useful guilt. Maybe it's about repairing with your child once everyone has calmed down. Maybe this feeling of guilt would help you notice how stressed and tired you are and actually spur you on to change something for yourself, to repair with yourself. Shame, on the other hand, relates to an evaluation of who we are as a person. I'm a bad mum. I'm a bad dad. It's about who we are at our core, and this becomes toxic to our mental health and to how we behave as parents. Because where guilt can, in small doses, help us to repair and change, shame actually does the complete opposite. It keeps us small. It makes us more stressed and overwhelmed. It actually signals to our brain to focus inward and to ruminate rather than looking outwards to think about how we can amend the situation. And shame is where much of the toxic criticism comes from that keeps our threat mode running, or maybe makes us shut down altogether. You might be interested to know that research shows that women actually feel shame more easily than men overall. So mothers are particularly at risk because shame is also a very common emotion while we're parenting. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen to fathers too. It's about recognizing that much of these experiences as parents are simply not our fault. It's the way we are built and wired as humans. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't things we can do about it. Research and clinical evidence shows us that there are many effective things we can do to address our emotional regulation and our child's, as well as our levels of guilt and self-criticism, and on the flip side, our confidence as parents. So in the next podcasts, we're going to hear more about how each P key tackles these vicious cycles to break them down step by step. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. This is some of my favourite information to share with parents, and I will see you in the next podcast. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We explored the fascinating ways our brains work and how understanding this can really make a difference in how we understand and handle parenting challenges. If this episode resonated for you, I would love you to join us in the Guilty Parent Club. As a member of the club, you'll gain access to exclusive private podcasts and workbooks providing deeper dives into these topics, taking you step by step through the 6 P key framework, and they're packed with practical tools that you can apply straight away. For more details, head over to drjoethepsychologist.com/Guilty Parent Club. See you there.